Hey! Yes, you with the backpack! This isn't the bus station, sir. Step away from that counter, now! Let me see that badge again. You print these at home now, boy? I said step back! People like you don't fly out of this terminal! Get out! Before I have you removed.
The shove came before the sentence finished. Brennan's open palm caught Elias square on the chest, just above the sternum, and the paper coffee cup tilted in slow motion before surrendering its contents across 2 pairs of polished boots. The black canvas backpack hit the marble. A pen rolled. Somewhere behind the glass wall, a Gulfstream warmed its engines. Elias did not move. His right hand stayed open over his own chest, fingers spread, as if checking that his ribs were still where he had left them. His breathing did not change. His eyes did not leave the departure board glowing above the gate, Flight 01, standby in white serif letters. A muscle in his jaw moved once. Just once. In 6 hours, $47 million in federal training contracts would vanish from a government ledger, a regional director would resign before lunch, and a 12-year career would end in handcuffs on the same marble where the coffee was now pooling. Brennan did not know any of that yet. He did not know much of anything yet. What did Brennan not know about the man bleeding coffee on his polished boots? To understand why that morning broke a 12-year career, we have to go back 3 hours. And 22 years. 3 hours earlier, Elias was crossing a kitchen he had known for 22 years. The clock above the stove read 3:50. Outside, the suburb still belonged to the streetlights. Inside, 3 things sat on the counter where they always sat at this hour, a thermos of black coffee, a pressed navy uniform on a wooden hanger, and a black canvas backpack worn pale at the seams. He always laid them out in that order. Coffee first, uniform second, backpack last. 22 years of the same ritual. His wife called it superstition. He called it discipline. Anaya appeared in the doorway in a long gray robe, hair tied up, eyes still soft with sleep. She did not turn on the light. She never turned on the light when he flew at dawn. Coffee's strong tonight. It's morning. Not according to the sky. She smiled. He smiled back. 22 years of that exchange too, more or less, with small variations. He had grown up 40 miles south of this kitchen, in a town where the loudest sound was the freight line at midnight. His father had been a maintenance mechanic on regional turboprops, grease under the nails, hearing damage by 40, a quiet pride in knowing every rivet of an aircraft he would never fly. His mother had cleaned 3 houses a day and saved every other dollar in a coffee tin labeled for the boy. The tin had bought his first ground school textbook. The Air Force had bought the rest. 6 years of service, 2 deployments, a chest full of ribbons he kept in a drawer because Anaya said the wall was already busy. After the uniform came the airlines, first officer, captain, instructor, examiner, training captain. After the airlines came something he had never planned on. He had built a school. Meridian Flight Academy had opened in a leased hangar with 3 single-engine trainers and 4 students. That was 11 years ago. Today it occupied 2 campuses, certified more commercial pilots in the region than any other institution, and held a federal contract that he was not yet thinking about because at 3:55 in the morning he was still pouring coffee. His phone vibrated on the counter. He flipped it over. Mission 01/Captain Elias/Standby Crew/Departure 940/Terminal Exec Gate 1, he read it twice. He always read it twice. Is it him? Anaya asked. Backup crew. Probably won't fly. He likes the primary. Does the president know he's costing my husband the prettiest sleep on the block? I'll mention it. Mention it gently. He laughed, short and low, and she crossed the kitchen barefoot to button the top button of his uniform shirt. She did this every dawn flight too. Then she opened the backpack and slid in the leather portfolio he had set on the chair the night before, the one with the attendance sheets from Meridian, the contract folder, and the navy blue Class A credential card with the silver ribbon clipped to it. The silver ribbon meant training captain. It also meant other things. Most people who saw it did not know what those other things were. She zipped the bag closed. Why the old Honda today? Same reason as always. Which is? Nobody looks twice at a Honda. She tilted her head. And why does that matter to a man flying the president? He kissed her forehead. He did not answer. He had answered the question many times, in many ways, over 22 years. The shortest answer was that he had been looked at twice his entire life, and the Honda was the one place where it stopped. At 5:40 he stepped into the dark driveway. The Honda smelled of the same vinyl it had smelled of for 9 years. He set the backpack on the passenger seat, the way he set it every morning, and he turned the key. 12 miles north, another man was already adjusting his tie in another mirror. Brennan stood in the security locker room at 5:55 and worked a cloth over his badge until the brass returned his face to him. He did this every morning. He had done it for 12 years. The locker room smelled of 3 things: cheap cologne, black coffee from the vending pot down the hall, and the industrial soap they used on the floors. Brennan inhaled all 3 the way another man might inhale incense. They were the smells of the only place where he had ever felt fully assembled. He was 38. He had joined the aviation security unit at 26, after washing out of 2 other things he did not talk about. He had risen quickly. He had risen, in fact, faster than most of the men around him, and he had a private explanation for it that he never said out loud, that he could tell. That he could look at a person crossing the threshold of a terminal and know, in under a second, whether they belonged there. It was a gift, he believed. A practical, civic, slightly tragic gift. 3 formal complaints had been filed against him in 12 years. All 3 had been quietly archived. The first had cost him a written warning and a mandatory weekend course. The second had not cost him anything. The third had earned him a promotion to supervisor of the morning shift at the executive terminal, because the regional director liked men who were decisive at the gate. Brennan was decisive at the gate. He liked to arrive 90 minutes before shift to walk the perimeter, check the manifest, and, in his own private vocabulary, filter. There were people who belonged in an executive terminal and there were people who infiltrated one. The first group flew. The second group required attention. On the wall of his small office, just above the desk lamp, hung a framed diploma in a thin black frame. Meridian Flight Academy, Aviation Security Track, Class of 2014, the ink of the director's signature on the bottom right had faded slightly over the years and Brennan had never once read it. He had hung the frame, dusted the frame, and looked past the frame for a decade. He polished the badge a final time. He clipped it to his chest. He checked the angle in the mirror. He did not know that the morning unrolling around him would be the last morning his badge would shine on a uniform. He did not know that the signature on the diploma above his desk was about to walk through gate 1 carrying a paper coffee cup. At 6:48 a.m. dusty black Honda parked in the staff lot, 3 rows from the fence. Elias killed the engine and sat for a moment in the quiet. The sky over the runway was the color of wet slate. A baggage tractor coughed somewhere behind the hangars. He stepped out. The walk from the lot to the executive terminal took 90 seconds. He took it slowly. He always took it slowly. 22 years of dawn arrivals had taught him that the body needed those 90 seconds to remember it was a pilot again and not a husband. He carried the black backpack on his right shoulder. He wore a navy ball cap with no logo, a plain charcoal hoodie zipped to the throat, and the navy uniform trousers and polished black shoes underneath. The hoodie hid the 4 bars on his shoulders. The cap hid the gray at his temples. The silver ribbon on the credential card lay flat inside the front pocket of the bag, invisible from any angle. He liked it that way. The terminal smelled of 3 things at this hour: jet fuel drifting in from the open service door, fresh paper from the printer behind the desk, and the faint, sweet trace of orchids in the lobby vase that the cleaning staff replaced every Tuesday. It was a Tuesday. Inside the lobby, a young woman in a black blazer was crouched beside a tripod, leveling a professional camera against the floor tiles. Her press badge swung at her throat as she worked. Naomi/Aviation Today/credential #4471, the terminal's communications office had cleared her 3 weeks earlier for a feature on accessibility in private aviation. She had arrived at 6. She was supposed to film a director by 8. She was, at this moment, only adjusting white balance. She looked up as Elias passed. Their eyes met for half a second. She gave the small nod one professional gives another at dawn. He returned it. She went back to her viewfinder. The desk receptionist looked up as he approached. "Good morning, sir. Crew or passenger?" "Crew." "Credential, please." He set the backpack on the counter and reached for the zipper. "I'll take it from here." The voice came from behind his right shoulder. Crisp. Practiced. The kind of voice that had been waiting at a doorway for 12 years. Elias did not turn immediately. He finished resting his hand on the zipper. Then he turned. Brennan stood 3 steps away, polished badge catching the overhead light, right hand resting at the radio on his belt. He did not extend a greeting. He extended a look, top to bottom, bottom to top, lingering on the hoodie, on the cap, on the canvas backpack worn pale at the seams. The receptionist stepped back from the counter. The first look said what the first sentence had not yet found the courage to say. "Where did you get this?" Brennan had pulled the navy blue credential from the front pocket of the backpack without asking. He held it between thumb and forefinger, at arm's length, the way one holds a wet rag. The silver ribbon dangled. "It was issued to me." "By who?" "By the agency printed on the back." Brennan turned the card over. He did not read it. He turned it back. "You print these at home now?" Elias extended his right hand, palm up. A simple, unhurried gesture. "Take the card, return the card." The way 1,000 check-ins had unfolded across 22 years. Brennan pulled the card back toward his own chest. "I'll hold this for the duration of the inspection." "There's no inspection scheduled." "There is now." The receptionist was looking at her keyboard with the focus of a woman who would rather be anywhere else. Behind the glass wall, the Gulfstream's engines wound down to a polite hum. In the corner, Naomi's hand had moved, very slowly, to the record button on her tripod-mounted camera. The small red light came on. She did not breathe. Brennan unzipped the main compartment of the backpack. He did not ask. The leather portfolio came out first. He set it on the counter with a thump that was louder than it needed to be. He flipped it open. 40 pages of attendance sheets fanned across the marble, Meridian Flight Academy/instrument rating/class B/captain's signature required. Each page bore the same signature in the lower right corner, an unhurried looping line that ended in a small flat dash. Brennan's eyes passed over the pages without reading them. "Paperwork doesn't fly planes, sir. It documents who does. Anyone can carry paper." He pushed the portfolio aside. The second item out of the bag was a thick folder bound with a black ribbon, Federal Contract/Training Services/Renewal Q2. Brennan glanced at the cover and dismissed it with a small shake of the head, as if it had embarrassed itself by existing. "Sir, this is the executive terminal. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand. It serves a different clientele." "I know exactly which clientele this terminal serves." The sentence was quiet. It was also the longest sentence Elias had spoken since walking through the door, and something about its evenness made Brennan's shoulders square half an inch tighter. He keyed his radio. "Gate 1, this is Supervisor Brennan. Suspicious individual at the crew counter, claiming captain status. Requesting witness presence." The radio chirped a response. Two pairs of boots began moving from the far end of the corridor. A businessman in a tailored gray suit had paused 12 feet away with a leather briefcase in his right hand. He was not pretending to read his phone. He was watching openly, mouth slightly open. An older woman in a cream travel coat had stopped halfway to the lounge door. The receptionist had taken one full step backward and was now, for all practical purposes, no longer at the counter. Naomi had not moved. The red light had not blinked. The two responding officers arrived. They were younger than Brennan, both of them, and they took up positions at his shoulders with the practiced symmetry of men who had done this exact choreography many times. The taller one was named Reyes. The shorter one was named Park. Both of them wore the same shoulder patch as Brennan. Both of them, although they did not yet know it mattered, had been trained at Meridian in 2019. What do we have, supervisor? Possible credential fraud. Possible impersonation of crew. Subject is uncooperative. I have not been asked a question. Brennan turned. Sir, you don't speak unless spoken to. That is not a regulation. It is in my terminal. The phrase landed badly. The businessman with the briefcase made a small sound through his nose. Brennan's neck flushed pink above the collar. He stepped closer. He was now inside the 18 inches that separates conversation from confrontation. Sir. I am going to ask you to remove the cap. Elias removed the cap. He set it on the counter. The gray at his temples caught the overhead light. His face was composed in a way that some faces are composed only after a great deal of practice. And the hoodie. It is not a regulation to remove outerwear at a check-in counter. It is when I ask. He did not unzip the hoodie. A long second passed. The two officers shifted their weight, almost in unison. Reyes glanced sideways at Brennan and did not find the eye contact he was looking for. Park's hand drifted, then drifted back. The businessman lifted his phone, finally, and aimed it at the counter. Naomi's camera kept rolling. Brennan was not finished. He reached, again without asking, into the side pocket of the backpack and drew out a small black leather case Elias kept there for headsets and pens. He turned it upside down on the counter. A pen rolled. A spare nameplate rolled. A folded envelope tumbled out and lay there, stamped with the Meridian seal in faint gold. Brennan did not pick up the envelope. He shoved it aside with the back of his hand, the way one shoves a napkin off a table edge. Sir, I'm going to need you to step back from the counter. I have not approached the counter. You have. Step back. Elias took one step back. Exactly one. He did not break eye contact. He did not raise his hands. He kept his palms visible at his sides, the way a man keeps his palms visible when he has decided that the next thing to move in this room will not be him. And the shoes. The lobby went still. The taller officer, Reyes, made the smallest possible sound in the back of his throat. It was not a word. It was the involuntary noise a trained professional makes when his supervisor crosses the line between procedure and improvisation. Sir. Did you say shoes? You heard me. It is not a regulation to remove footwear at a check-in counter. It is when he did not finish the sentence. Even Brennan heard, in his own voice, the third use in 5 minutes of the same phrase, and somewhere in the back of his mind the phrase began to lose its weight. He recovered fast. He always recovered fast. 12 years had taught him to. He turned to the businessman. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower the phone. This is a security matter. I'm a witness to a security matter. You are obstructing one. I'm standing in a lobby. The businessman did not lower the phone. He took, instead, 2 slow steps back and angled the phone slightly upward, framing both Brennan and the 2 officers in the shot. He had been an attorney for 19 years before he had become whatever he had become next, and he knew exactly what an angle was for. Brennan's neck flushed a deeper pink. He turned back to Elias. "You're going to follow me to the screening room. Now. On what authority?" "Mine." "That is not authority. That is a name." The sentence was not delivered with heat. It was delivered with the tone of a flight examiner explaining to a cadet why the answer on the checklist is not the answer the cadet has just given. It was, in some terrible way, almost gentle. Brennan did not hear the gentleness. He heard the contradiction. He stepped inside the 18 inches again. He was now within 9 inches. His breath, faintly bitter with vending machine coffee, reached the space between them. "Last time I'm asking, sir." "You are not asking." The phone in the inner pocket of the hoodie vibrated. 2 short pulses. A long one. He knew the pattern. The pattern meant ground operations. The pattern meant now. He moved his right hand toward the inside of the hoodie. That was when Brennan shoved him. The open palm landed flat against the upper chest, just above the sternum, with the kind of measured force a man uses when he wants to feel he has not crossed a line he has just crossed. The paper coffee cup that had been resting on the counter, the receptionist had set it there for him, a courtesy, 2 minutes earlier, tilted, fell, and broke open across the marble. Brown liquid spread under the polished boots of the 2 officers. The backpack slid off the counter. The pen rolled. The folded Meridian envelope drifted into the puddle and began to darken at one corner. Naomi inhaled through her teeth and the red light kept rolling. "People like you don't fly out of this terminal." The sentence landed in the open air of the lobby and stayed there, suspended above the puddle, for a long beat. It was not a complicated sentence. It was not a sentence Brennan had not said before, in slightly different shapes, in slightly different terminals, in slightly different decades. It was, however, the first time he had said it on camera. It was also the first time he had said it to a man whose signature was framed on the wall of his own office. Reyes's hand moved, almost involuntarily, toward Brennan's elbow. He did not complete the gesture. 12 years of seniority sat between them, and 12 years of seniority is heavier than instinct. Park took a quarter step backward, out of the puddle, and did not step back in. The older woman in the cream coat had pressed her hand to her mouth. The receptionist had taken a third step back and was now flush against the wall behind the counter. The businessman had not lowered the phone. 3 new arrivals in the lounge entrance, a flight attendant in a red blazer, a young father with a small child holding his hand, a corporate pilot in a crisp white shirt, had all stopped where they stood. The flight attendant in the red blazer recognized Elias. She did not say anything. She did not have to. Her face did the work. She took out her own phone. She did not raise it. She held it at her hip and pressed record with her thumb, the way the cabin crews had been quietly trained to do in incidents that did not yet have a name. Elias looked down at his chest, where Brennan's hand had been. He looked at the puddle of coffee. He looked at the backpack on the floor. He looked at the open portfolio with the 40 signatures across 40 pages. He looked at the darkening corner of the Meridian envelope. He looked at Naomi's camera, briefly, and acknowledged it with the smallest possible movement of his chin. Then he looked at Brennan. It was not a fake credential. It was not a stolen tablet. It was the entire life of a man, spread across the marble like the coffee. 22 years of dawn arrivals. 6 years of service. 11 years of a school. 40 pages of attendance sheets. 1 contract folder. 1 silver ribbon. 1 man who had been looked at twice his entire life, and 1 man who had built a career around the second look. The room held its breath. Brennan, for reasons he could not himself have explained, took half a step back. He did not know why he had taken it. He knew only that the 18 inches he had just crossed felt, suddenly, like the wrong 18 inches to have crossed. The polished badge on his chest caught the overhead light and threw a small bright square onto the wall behind the counter. He looked, briefly, at the small bright square. He looked away. Elias breathed in. Once. Slowly. He did not raise his voice. He did not raise his hands. He did not, in any way that would have been visible from across the lobby, react. In the inner pocket of the hoodie, his phone vibrated again. 2 short pulses. 1 long. It was in that silence, with coffee on the floor and 20 pairs of eyes on the 2 of them, that Elias finally moved his hand. He crouched. He did not bend. He did not stoop. He crouched, the way a man crouches who has spent 22 years going through pre-flight checklists on the floor of a hangar. He picked up the backpack first. He set it upright on the counter. He picked up the pen. He set it beside the backpack. He did not look at the coffee. He reached into the inner pocket of the hoodie and took out the phone. The screen was lit. Mission 01/crew check-in overdue /655/departure window at risk. Brennan's eyes flicked to the screen. Once. Then away. Then back. Something in the words Mission 01 registered against the back wall of his memory and did not yet find its file. Elias pressed a contact at the top of the favorites list. 2 rings. A woman's voice answered, brisk and military. Tower 1, go ahead, Captain. He did not look at Brennan when he spoke. Tower, this is Captain Elias. Hold Mission 01. I've been detained at Gate 1. Send Director Holloway. A pause on the line. 1 full second. The tower controller had been hearing his voice on this frequency for 11 years and had never once heard it deliver that sentence. Copy, Captain. Holloway dispatched. ETA 4 minutes. He hung up. The word captain hung in the air the way the earlier sentence had hung in the air. It did not move. It did not fade. It sat between Elias and Brennan and waited. Brennan opened his mouth. Closed it. The pink in his neck was retreating now, back down under the collar, leaving behind a color that was not quite white and not quite gray. His right hand was still resting on the radio at his belt. The radio had not chirped. Nobody on the other end was going to help him with what was coming. Naomi's camera had pivoted 3 degrees on its tripod. It caught the moment Brennan's hand fell away from the radio. For minutes later, 3 pairs of heels crossed the terminal in the rhythm of a parade. Director Holloway came through the lounge door first, 53 years old, navy suit, ID badge swinging at her chest, the corner of a leather folio under her arm. 2 assistants flanked her. Behind them, a man in a dark suit with an earpiece walked at the easy pace of someone who had cleared the room before he entered it. Secret Service. The executive terminal lobby, which had been holding one breath, held a second one. Holloway did not look at Brennan. She walked directly to Elias. She did not embrace him. She did not apologize, not yet. She extended one hand and shook his with the brevity of a colleague. Captain. The President's standby aircraft is on a 15-minute hold. I need you in the cockpit by 9:25 to recover the window. Understood. She turned, finally, to the rest of the lobby. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. For everyone's clarity. This is Captain Elias. Designated Commander of Mission 01, Presidential Standby Crew. Founder and CEO of Meridian Flight Academy, federal training contractor for this agency. He is the highest-ranking individual in this terminal at this moment. Brennan tried to speak. Holloway raised one finger without looking at him. He did not finish the sentence. Elias reached into the inner pocket of his uniform shirt, the pocket the hoodie had been hiding the whole time. He drew out a small leather case. He opened it on the counter. The Class A credential lay inside, navy blue, official seal, silver ribbon, photograph in full uniform with 4 bars on the shoulders. He set it next to the open portfolio. He reached into the leather portfolio and drew out the contract folder Brennan had pushed aside earlier. He flipped it open to the signature page. $47 million in federal training services, awarded to Meridian Flight Academy, signed on the founder and CEO line in the unhurried looping hand that ended in a small flat dash. He set it next to the credential. He drew out a third document from the back of the portfolio. A single sheet. The class roster of Aviation Security Track, class of 2014. 23 names. Halfway down the list, alphabetical, Brennan, F., in the lower right corner of the sheet, on the director line, the same unhurried looping signature with the same small flat dash. He set it next to the contract. 3 documents on the counter. Credential. Contract. Roster. Brennan looked at the third sheet. He looked at the signature. He looked, for the first time in 10 years, with any real attention, at the framed diploma he kept above his desk in the small office at the end of the corridor, the diploma whose signature he had dusted around 1,000 times and never read. The signatures matched. The face in the credential photograph, 4 bars, navy uniform, gray at the temples, was the face that had signed his diploma. The man he had shoved was the man who had let him into the industry. Brennan made a sound. It was not a word. It was the small involuntary noise a person makes when a load-bearing belief is removed from underneath them. Elias looked at Holloway. He spoke quietly. Suspend Mr. Brennan's credentials. Now. Holloway turned to the 2 officers at Brennan's shoulders. She did not raise her voice either. Confiscate his badge. Confiscate his radio. Escort him to the office. Detain pending federal review. The 2 officers, who had been Brennan's officers 9 minutes earlier, moved in the practiced symmetry of men who had also been trained at Meridian. What happened between 7:14 and the sunset of that day would change the lives of 6 people and the budget of a federal agency. 7:22, Brennan's badge came off his chest in front of the same lobby that had watched him polish it. The 2 officers walked him down the corridor he had walked 90 minutes earlier, past the small office with the framed diploma above the desk. He did not look up at the diploma. He could not. The cuffs were not theatrical, soft, procedural, federal, but they were cuffs, and the businessman with the leather briefcase was still filming when they crossed the lobby. Elias did not watch him go. He was already at the counter, signing the receipt for his return credential, the silver ribbon back where it belonged. He drank a fresh paper cup of coffee. He read the operations brief. He nodded at the receptionist, who had finally left the wall and returned to her keyboard with the relief of a woman who had survived something she had not signed up for. 7:38, the flight attendant in the red blazer uploaded her hip-shot recording to a private cabin crew chat that connected 640 members across 3 regional carriers. The clip was 41 seconds long. The first comment appeared in under a minute. By 7:50 the clip had been mirrored to 2 larger industry forums. By 8 o'clock it had escaped the industry entirely and landed on the open internet, where it began to multiply in the quiet, exponential way that footage of this kind multiplies in the first hour. 8:05, Naomi uploaded 97 seconds of higher resolution footage to the Aviation Today channel. Title: Captain detained at Gate 1. The first 30 seconds showed the shove. The middle 30 showed the phone call to the tower. The last 30 showed the 3 documents on the counter. There was no commentary. There did not need to be. By 9 o'clock the video had 40,000 views. By noon it had 1,800,000. By the end of the day it had 6,300,000. By the end of the week, 11,200,000. 9:25, Elias walked across the apron to Mission 01 in the Navy uniform, 4 bars on each shoulder, the cap now where caps belong. The first officer waiting at the air stairs saluted on instinct and Elias returned it. The pre-flight took the standard 19 minutes. The cockpit voice recorder logged no irregularities. The aircraft pushed back at 9:42, 18 minutes behind schedule, recorded in the official log as ground security incident, resolved. 10:14, the aircraft was at cruise. Elias did not mention the morning to his first officer. The first officer, who had also seen the clip on his phone in the crew lounge 20 minutes earlier, did not mention it either. They flew the way professionals fly. Quietly. Precisely. With the radio at the right volume. 11:30, the agency convened an internal hearing in a conference room on the 4th floor. Director Holloway chaired. 3 previous complaints against Brennan, filed in 2019, 2021, and 2023, all archived without action, were unsealed and read into the record. The pattern was no longer a pattern. It was a portfolio. The 2019 complainant, a black corporate pilot named Whitfield who had been turned away from the same Gate 1 on the suspicion of carrying a forged license, was contacted by the agency's general counsel before noon and offered, for the first time in 6 years, a formal apology in writing. He accepted. He also retained a civil rights attorney within the hour. The 2021 complainant, a Latina flight engineer, did the same by 1,300 hours. The 2023 complainant, a Sikh first officer who had been ordered to remove his turban at a screening checkpoint, was already in active litigation. His attorneys requested, by close of business, that the new testimony be entered into discovery. 12 o'clock, the Federal Procurement Office, acting on a procedural alarm triggered by the unfolding hearing, issued a precautionary notice. The $47 million training contract with Meridian Flight Academy would be suspended pending review of the morning's incident. The notice arrived in Holloway's inbox at 12:04. Holloway read it. Holloway laughed once, flatly, into the empty room. Then Holloway pulled the personnel file of every certified officer working out of the executive terminal and ran the numbers. 61% of those officers had been trained at Meridian. 48% of every certified aviation security officer in the entire region had been trained at Meridian. She drafted a 1-page response to the procurement office and copied the agency's general counsel. The response contained no argument. It contained a number, a percentage, and a single sentence: suspending the contract suspends the workforce. The suspension was reversed in 48 hours. The contract was renewed for another 5 years. The renewal added one new clause, drafted by Elias himself: every officer trained under the contract would complete a quarterly module on credential verification and anti-bias procedure, designed and audited by an independent civil rights board. The renewal also added a second clause, requested by Holloway: the contract value increased by $9 million to fund the new modules. The total ceiling rose to $56 million. 1345, 2 competing flight academies, smaller and hungrier, withdrew their pending bids on the renewal cycle. Their public statements cited alignment of values. Their private calls to their own lawyers cited the recording of the morning's incident, which had by then been viewed 3 million times. 1,400 hours, Brennan was terminated for cause. The termination letter cited Section 4.2, gross misconduct involving discriminatory treatment of a federal employee. He was banned from the aviation security industry for 5 years. A civil penalty of $280,000 was assessed under the federal civil rights statute. He signed the paperwork in a small windowless room with a federal mediator across the table. He did not speak. He did not look at the mediator's face. He signed each page on the line indicated. When it was over, the mediator slid one final document across the table: a notice of mandatory enrollment in a certified rehabilitation program. Brennan signed that one too. He walked out of the building through the staff entrance at 1447. He left his polished badge on the desk. The brass caught the afternoon light and threw a small bright square onto the wall. 1515, the agency's communications office, under direct instruction from Holloway, released a public statement of 3 paragraphs. The statement named the incident. It named the corrective action. It did not name Brennan, because federal procedure did not allow it to. It did, however, name the captain in the second paragraph, by full title and by aircraft. The statement was carried on the wire services within 20 minutes. 1530, the regional director of the agency, Brennan's direct supervisor for 9 years, the man who had quietly archived the 3 previous complaints, submitted his resignation. The resignation cited the desire to spend more time with family. The press release was 3 sentences long. Nobody believed it. The deputy director assumed the role on an interim basis. Her name was Okonkwo. Her first official act was to mandate implicit bias training across 11 executive terminals in the region. The procurement budget for the training was approved before the close of business. The training was awarded, by competitive bid, to Meridian Flight Academy. 1600 hours, the receptionist at the front desk, the woman who had stepped back to the wall, the woman who had not spoken, was called to Holloway's office. She arrived expecting reprimand. She left with a written commendation, a transfer to the agency's customer experience team at her current grade, and a quiet instruction to draft, in her own words, a procedural recommendation on what a counter-agent should do the next time a supervisor crossed a line in front of her. She drafted it that night. It became, in the agency's internal handbook, item 7.4. 1630, Reyes and Park, the 2 officers who had flanked Brennan, were each placed on a 30-day administrative review. Neither was terminated. Both were required to retake the credential verification module and to complete 16 additional hours of bias training. Reyes asked, at the end of his review interview, whether the instructor for the new module was going to be the captain himself. The interviewer said she did not know. Reyes nodded. He did not ask anything else. 1700 hours, Naomi's editor at Aviation Today called her at her apartment and offered her a contract position covering aviation policy. Salary doubled. Benefits included. Start date Monday. Her tripod was still in the back of her car. She accepted. She also kept the original 97 seconds of footage on a secure backup drive, untouched, because she had been told once by an older reporter that the first cut of a story is sometimes the only honest one. 1730, the flight attendant in the red blazer received a private message from her airline's HR office, asking her to come in for a conversation about the unauthorized recording. Her union representative replied to the message before she did. The conversation did not happen. The recording remained online. 2 weeks later, her airline updated its cabin crew bystander policy to explicitly authorize what she had done. 1815, the framed photograph of the previous regional director, the one who had resigned, was removed from the wall of the corridor outside the conference room. The hook stayed. The next portrait would be hung within the month. 1900 hours, the president's office, briefed on the incident through standard channels, issued a 1-paragraph statement. It thanked Captain Elias for his professionalism under unwarranted obstruction and praised the agency's swift corrective action. The statement was carried on 3 networks. The 18-minute departure delay, the statement noted, had been recovered in flight by the captain's standard cruise procedures. 2030. The framed diploma above Brennan's old desk was taken down by a maintenance worker as part of the office reassignment. The maintenance worker, a man named Carlos who had worked at the terminal for 16 years, paused for a moment to read the signature on the bottom right corner. He recognized it. He smiled, very briefly, to himself. Then he wrapped the frame in brown paper and labeled the package for return to the original signatory. The package would arrive at Meridian Flight Academy 3 days later. Elias would unwrap it himself in his office. He would not hang it on his wall. He would file it in the second drawer of his desk, in a folder labeled simply 2014. 2110, 3 former cadets of Meridian, now captains at 3 different carriers, posted independently on 3 different platforms in support of their old director. None of them coordinated. All 3 posts went viral within the hour. By morning the hashtag trained by Elias had been used 22,000 times. 2200 hours. The Casablanca Daily Bulletin closed with a 1-line acknowledgement of the morning's events under the heading Personnel, Standby Crew. The line read, Mission 01 commanded by Captain Elias. Departure delayed 18 minutes due to ground security incident. Mission completed without further irregularity. The bulletin went out to 4,700 subscribers. Among them, 3 were federal procurement officers in 3 different agencies. By Friday, Meridian Flight Academy had received unsolicited inquiries about expanded contracts from each of them. The combined potential value of the 3 inquiries, if all converted, was $31 million. 2240, the civil rights attorney representing the 2019 complainant filed a notice of intent to seek class certification, citing the now public pattern at the executive terminal. The class, if certified, was estimated at 47 individuals across 6 years. The number was not lost on anyone in the agency. 2312. Holloway sent Elias a single text message. Contract secured. Brennan processed. Industry on notice. Get some sleep, Captain. He read it on the curb outside the terminal, where the Honda was waiting in the same row, 3 from the fence. He did not reply. He drove home with the windows half open. The night smelled of 3 things: jet fuel still clinging to the cuffs of the uniform, the clean cold of late spring air, and the faint orange of the streetlights coming through the open window. The radio was off. He preferred it off after a flight. When Elias finally opened the door of his house, it was 2347. And for the first time in 22 hours, no one asked to see his credential. Anaya was at the kitchen table with a bowl of soup and the small reading lamp on. She did not look up from her book when he came in. She never looked up immediately. She listened, instead, to the way he closed the door, to the weight of it, the speed of it, the small click of the deadbolt, and from those 3 sounds she knew most of what she needed to know about the day. She said, without looking up, "Soup's hot." He said, "Long day." She said, "I saw." He sat down. He took the navy ball cap off his head and hung it on the hook by the door, the way he had hung it for 22 years. He looked at it for a moment, dust on the brim, salt at the inside band. Asterisk same door. Different man, asterisk she slid the bowl across the table. 3 changes survived that morning, and they survived because someone wrote them down before the news cycle moved on. The first was the federal mandate for implicit bias retraining across 11 executive terminals. The program now bore an internal designation, but everyone in the agency referred to it, off the record, as the Gate 1 protocol. The second was the Class A scholarship, founded by Meridian Flight Academy 3 weeks later, which fully funded the commercial pilot certification of 30 Black and Latino cadets per year. The first cohort enrolled in the fall. The third was the new federal regulation requiring continuous video recording at every credential checkpoint inside any executive or governmental terminal. The regulation was numbered, dryly, with a 4-digit code. Among the agents who actually worked the gates, it was simply called the Naomi rule. Naomi herself was, at that very moment, in her own apartment, finishing the lead of her next feature, a piece on a black surgical nurse mistaken for a janitor by the surgeon she had just helped save in the operating room. She had 2 more leads in her notebook. She had, for the first time in her career, more story than time. Brennan was 3 states away, already, working the front counter of a small aviation parts store owned by a cousin who had agreed to take him in. He woke at 6, opened at 7, completed 2 hours of his court-ordered rehabilitation course every evening. He did not polish anything anymore. He had asked the cousin not to keep a mirror behind the counter. In the kitchen, Anaya watched her husband eat soup. She did not ask what had happened. She had seen the video. She had seen, more importantly, the look on his face when he opened the door, and she had recognized it from 22 years of dawn arrivals, the look of a man who had flown a long flight and landed it cleanly. She said, the signature on the diploma. He said, he never read it. She said, most people don't. He said, that's the whole problem. She let him finish the soup. She turned out the small lamp. Outside, the Honda sat in the driveway under a low spring moon, dust on the hood, 9 years on the odometer, anonymous as ever. Dignity does not require a raised voice. It requires altitude of character. If you had been the passenger in that lobby, coffee on the floor, 12 pairs of eyes on the counter, a uniform hidden under a hoodie, which version of yourself would have shown up? If you had been Naomi, would your hand have found the record button in time? If you had been Brennan, would you have looked, even once, at the name on the diploma above your own desk? In the comments below, tell us in one sentence about the moment you were underestimated, and what you did with it. If this story moved you, hit like. If you want the next one, the black surgical nurse mistaken for a janitor by the surgeon she had just saved, subscribe. Send this video to one person who needs to see it today and share. And tap the bell so the next story lands in your feed the moment it goes live. Because sometimes the person you underestimate has been signing your diploma for 10 years. See you in the next video, peace.